Good evening, ladies. If you've been living under a rock, you probably didn't notice that gold, silver, and what we talked about in the last video, uranium, are all going into massive supply squeezes in 2025 and continuing into 2026. And because of that, the price of these assets has gone absolutely parabolic. Now, in today's video, we want to be looking at what's coming next, what's likely to experience a massive supply shock in 2026 and beyond. And in today's video, we're going to be discussing what could potentially be the biggest supply shock in any metal or any commodity in human history, and that is copper. So like I explained in my last video on uranium, commodities such as copper and uranium tend to go through these cycles in which a new unexpected source of demand comes that the copper miners weren't expecting. And this drives up the price of copper, it drives up the price of uranium, it drives up the price of silver. People weren't expecting it, so in the meantime, while that new demand source is coming in, it takes a long time in order to set up new mines to dig for new commodities, new oil, whatever it is. And in that time, the people who are mining, whatever it is, oil, uranium, copper, those miners make an absolute fortune because the price is up. The demand can't get satiated because there's this new demand and there's not enough supply. And it goes through this entire boom and bust cycle where people are mining more and more to satiate this demand. And eventually they overbuild and they mine way too much and it all collapses. So we want to get in at the start of these cycles. Obviously, you'd want to get in at the very bottom. However, as we can see from this chart, copper looked like it's kind of just starting a new or like halfway through a new boom cycle, and the demand is absolutely enormous. The supply is not coming online for 10 to 20 years. Like, these cycles last decades. They're not like monthly, they're not like quarterly cycles, they're not like weekly cycles. These cycles last many years, if not decades. So it's not like you're too late necessarily already. So in my last video I went through that entire cycle in detail, so if you want to learn a bit about that, you can watch that video. But basically people haven't really noticed, well, there's just only starting to notice now that the supply of copper, like obviously you can recycle copper, you can get it from different sources, you can get it from different places, but people are starting to realize that that is running out. I'll show you a little clip here from this billionaire, Robert Friedland, talking about the supply crunch in copper and the newfound energy requirements the newfound supply requirements for copper.
The iron ore, the gold, the copper, the aluminum, the nickel, all the metals are so thinly traded and so critical. You have no chance to get off of crude oil. You can't build electric cars and windmills and solar and have a modern military without these metals. So there's a reason why underwater power cables are so expensive. That's what it looks like when you put up a windmill offshore Nantucket Island and you want to bring that electricity and be green. It's all copper, 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 copper. Copper right now, we're expecting that to be a $270 billion a year market by tomorrow morning. And where's this metal going to come from? There's no copper in inventory at all. We're consuming 30 million tons of copper a year, only 4 million tons of which is recycled. That means to maintain 3% GDP growth, now listen carefully, with no electrification, this is with burning oil and gas. To maintain global 3% GDP growth, we have to mine the same amount of copper in the next 18 years as we mined in the last 10,000 years.
So obviously the big demand shock for copper has been AI. If you didn't know, which I'm sure you probably know, AI needs an absolute retarded amount of energy, and it needs shitloads of energy. And how do you transport energy? You transport it through electric wires, electric cables, which are what is the most conductive material in the world? It's silver. What's the second most conductive material in the world? Copper. That's why everyone uses copper wires. Obviously you can't use silver wires, even though it's more conductive. Like, you can use that for very small apparatus and really important stuff because it's super conductive, but it's much more expensive than copper. So obviously everyone uses copper wires in basically everything. And AI needs a lot of electricity. On top of that, AI also needs cooling. It needs massive cooling. In order to cool that, they use copper plates. So they need, like, each megawatt of AI data center needs 30 to 50 tons of copper. So absolutely, like, they need so much copper. And by 2030, the AI data centers are expected to triple in output and energy consumption. And by 2040, it's expected to 10x. It's already taking 5% of US power. So in 10 years, it's going to be doing 10 times that, which is absolutely insane. Or 15 years. In 5 years, it's going to do triple that. So where is all that copper going to come from? So that was kind of an unexpected source of demand for copper. What are some other demands for copper that maybe were a little bit underestimated 10 years ago, which led to this massive spike in demand for copper that is going to continue over the next decade? Number one, electric vehicles. Electric vehicles use 3 times as much copper as gas-powered vehicles. Number two, everything's getting a little bit like global tensions are starting to rise. There's a little bit more war. Russia invading Ukraine. Europe is getting a little bit shaky. They're getting a little bit worried. Everyone wants to spend more on defense. What do modern defense systems use? They use a lot of electric weapons, drones. They use a lot of modern technology, which is highly electric. Now, you just need to think like everything in the future is going to be electric. How does electricity run? It runs through copper wires. Everything to do with like modern systems, modern defense, it's all going to be electric, and it's all going to require a lot of copper. And people on defense spending, they're not going to really care if they have to spend an extra 20% on copper. You know, this is like, oh, we have to spend this. It's like, they're not going to be like, so the difference between copper and say gold, the difference between copper and silver is, say I wanted to get a gold chain, if it's €1,000 or $1,000 for a gold chain, I'm like, yeah, that's gonna look fucking sick, bro. I'll happily spend that on €1,000. But if the price of gold doubles and it's 2,000, I'm gonna be like, I can't really afford that anymore. I'm a brokey, so I'm not gonna buy the gold necklace. But defense contractor, an EV manufacturer, AI data center, they're gonna be like, oh, the price of copper is $8 instead of $4 that it was last year. Well, we need the fucking copper. We're gonna pay it. So it's inelastic demand, not like gold and silver. The other point about gold and silver, as opposed to copper, is that basically all the copper that's above ground is being used. It's being used in houses. It's like, yeah, some people recycle it, but it's not like people wear copper necklaces. It's not like people hoard copper in vaults. Like people hoard gold in vaults. And if the price got high enough, they would sell that on the open market. They would sell that gold, or they would sell their jewelry. They would sell their silver necklace because it's gone up 5x in the last 5 years. They might be like, oh, we have a load of silver cutlery. Maybe we need a bit of money. Let's just sell that. But no one really has, well, maybe they do have copper cutlery, but I doubt you're going to the fucking pawn shop to sell €20 of copper cutlery. Like, it doesn't really make sense. And no one's hoarding like if you wanted to store like $1,000 worth of copper, you're going to need like a huge room to store all that copper. So people don't hoard copper as much as they do with gold and silver. So it's a really inelastic supply. All the copper that's been dug up, basically all of it is, you can't get at it. You can't put it onto the open market. So that's another difference with copper. So the only way we're going to get more copper is if we dig. And as you know, the entire world wants to go green. They want green energy. They want to stop using oil and gas, and they want to use wind and solar. And how do they get that electricity? How do they connect all that wind farms? How do they connect that to the grid? You guessed it, with copper wires. And that's only kind of set to continue, as well as the developing world is starting to get a bit more money. They're going to be wanting to buy more electronics. They're going to be wanting to buy air conditioning. Air conditioning needs a shitload of copper, but they're going to be like, oh, air conditioning, I live in the third world and it's so hot, I can finally afford an air conditioning unit. Let's fucking go. Let's go buy this. So the demand for copper is going to be extreme over the next 10 to 20 years. And let's have a look at how much supply we can actually get online. Basically, the demand for copper means that in the next 20 years, we're going to have to mine the same amount of copper that we've ever mined in human history. So we have to double the amount of copper that's above ground in the next 20 years, probably less. So the last supply crash, People like copper miners were very cautious on opening new copper mines. They didn't expect all this new demand sources to come online this quickly. So they are not ready for this. And to make a copper mine, like it's not like you just go, I'd say there's copper over there, let's dig, oh look, we found copper, let's sell it. No, it takes like 20 years by the time you've gone looking for the copper, you found the copper, you get the permits, you dig, you refine, you set up the refinery and all that. It takes 20 years before you can actually sell the copper from a new mine. There has been no new mines in a long time. So basically all the copper that's coming online is from existing mines. These mines are also, they've already dug up all the easiest copper. So the copper they're digging up now is like, there's way less copper in the soil that they're bringing up or the rocks that they're bringing up. There's way less copper ore, so it's like much lower quality, and they have to dig way deeper to find this copper. So it's actually going to be even harder to get all this copper. And even though people can see, okay, there's going to be huge demand for copper, it's not until the price goes like way above where it is now that it becomes economically a good idea to go digging for this copper. As a bit of a side tangent, like the way I said, like in the last boom bust cycle, people went so crazy with the mining, and then basically the China growth story, not collapsed, but it slowed down. So there was a less demand for copper than expected. So all of these companies that started mining copper actually got wrecked. And something similar happened with lithium recently. So you can see in 2020 to 2022, EVs were going crazy. Everyone was so bullish on EVs, and EVs are still doing extremely well, but maybe not as fast as people over anticipated. So lithium has gone through a much quicker boom and bust cycle. So this is a little side tangent, free video, but also lithium is going through one of these supply crunches because all these miners kind of got wrecked mining lithium and copper. But now EVs are doing very well, and obviously lithium is used heavily in an electric vehicle as well. Lithium ion batteries, that's to make the batteries, they use lithium. And as you can see, the lithium miners are starting to turn around as well. All right, so now maybe I've convinced you that there might be a bit of a supply squeeze coming for copper and potentially lithium as well. Like basically all these commodities are going through the same thing, where there's just going to be huge demand for all these metals to electrify the world and for AI to take over the world. So there is an opportunity now in certain stocks and certain commodities over the next number of years. And yeah, we can kind of ride this wave, ride this boom. And yeah, we kind of have to be on the ball on when to exit, because these are cyclical and they'll crash maybe 5, 10, 20 years down the line. But I think we're okay for the moment. And before we get into the individual stocks, if you want to work one-on-one with me, if you want to set up a call, DM me on Twitter or Telegram. And if you want to learn about stocks, if you want to learn about crypto, I can help you, and we can kind of work out if you want to just have a one-on-one call for like a kind of a beginner call to set up your portfolio, or if you want to become like, expert in crypto, an expert in investing, which I've been doing for many years, and I'm doing this full time. Quit my job almost a year ago at this point. And yeah, I love life. I'm living here in Granada in Spain. I can travel the world and kind of enjoy my life and do what I love on a daily basis. So if you want, DM me on Twitter. We can see if there's some way that I can help you, because I would love to help all you guys that have been following me for a few years. But let's get into the different tickers, the different copper stocks. So if you watched my last video on uranium, you would have heard that even if like the price of a commodity just goes up 10%, if the price of a commodity goes up 30%, if the price of a commodity doubles, the profits that a miner of that commodity are going to explode. They're going to go much, much more than just the increase of the spot price of that commodity. Why do the miners of these commodities act as such high beta? It's because every price increase is just pure profits for them of the commodity. If the price of the commodity doubles, their profits could go up 10x. So like, for example, the price of copper right now is $6. Say you were mining the copper for $5. So for every pound of copper that you sold, you were making a $1 profit. So you're making what, a 20% profit. But now if the price of copper goes up to $7, Instead of making $1, you're making $2. So the price of the commodity only goes up 20%, but your profits double. If the price goes up to $10, you're making like 100% profit on what you're selling. You're mining it for $5 and you're selling it for 10, and your profits have 5x'd. So the price of if your profit's 5x, it's quite likely that your stock price should also 5x, because that's generally how people price stocks. It's based on their profits. So obviously we're going to be looking at copper miners. I still think these are the best plays. And what do you want to look for in copper miners? What are the kind of characteristics you want to look for? I want to look for miners, like we talked about, the deposits, the quality of the deposits of copper is getting lower and lower and lower in a lot of these mines. So you want to look for copper mines that still have high quality deposits, that still have a lot of copper that's easy to access, that they can bring online and sell for high profits straight away. You also want to look for copper miners in easy jurisdictions. So obviously with the uranium, one of the reasons that it's getting more expensive for uranium is because the West is completely cut off from Russia. They're not buying Russian deposits, Russian uranium anymore. They're not allowing themselves to buy it. So you don't want to be buying copper from like somewhere like Iran, or I don't know, where potentially could be a problem in the future. So copper mines in places like Australia, America, Western countries could be a little bit more stable and less risk. Okay, let's go through the safest copper miners. Now, they've already increased a lot, but like we said, the demand for copper is probably going to continue, and these guys' profits are probably going to continue. So these are a little bit of the safer bets. So we have Freeport-McMoRan, the ticker is FCX. They're kind of mostly based in the United States, Indonesia and Peru, but they have high quality copper. It's one of the biggest copper miners. The next copper miner we'll talk about, and with Freeport, I think they're quite friendly with America, and I think America is basically telegraphing what industries are going to do well over the next 10 years. So you just have to listen to them and basically buy those assets that they say are going to be important. So these have good ties with the United States, Freeport-McMoRan. The next one is Southern Copper Company. So this is based in Peru and Mexico. So maybe a tiny bit less friendly jurisdictions, but not really. But their copper quality is super, super high. It's probably the highest in the world. I think Chile has the best copper deposits. But again, it's still getting harder to dig this copper out. The next one, top tier one, is BHP. This is based out of Australia and Chile. Another safer play. Let's go into, and the other safe play is Rio Tinto. Rio Tinto doesn't just mine copper, it mines loads of stuff, so it's good to be exposed to. It's kind of like a more diversified bet on metals mining. And Rio Tinto is mostly based in Australia. Next, we'll talk about a little bit higher risk to reward plays. So I'll discuss why these are higher risk, but because they're higher risk, they could have higher upside. The first one is called Ivanhoe Mines. This is some of the highest quality copper in the entire world, but the problem is where it's based. It's based in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So, that's always going to be maybe a little bit, there could be a little bit more danger, there could be a little bit more political unrest in Congo. However, at this stage of the copper cycle, these kind of copper mines could be extremely lucrative and have the highest upside. But again, it has really, really high quality copper ore. So I'm looking at that one. Ivanhoe Mines, ticker IVN. And the last one that I'll mention is called Excelsior Mining. This is based in Arizona. Why is this a bit riskier? It's because it hasn't really started mining yet. So it's fully permitted, it's near term ready to go, but because it's quite a small mine, it's a little bit riskier, and because it hasn't really fully come online yet. So there are two a little bit higher risk reward if that's how you want to play it. How am I personally playing it? Again, I kind of think copper mines are the way to go. I know we're a little bit late on this, and as you can see, I don't want to go all in on one copper mine. If I was an absolute genius on metals and commodities trading, I would, but I'm mostly a crypto guy. I'm mostly a technology investor. So I'm not an expert in this, so I prefer to go the ETF route. So the main ETF for copper mines is called COPX. But as you can see, this has already ripped quite a lot. So it's not like you're getting in at a bargain basement price. However, you know, you're a little bit more diversified. You're taking on a little bit less risk using this COPX. One of the reasons that this has done very well recently is because a lot of copper mining, the byproduct of copper mining is actually silver. And because silver has gone on this absolutely insane run, a lot of these copper mines are already making a lot of money because of silver's run. So that silver increase in this copper mines is already baked into the copper price. So it's kind of like a little bit late for these copper mines based on the silver price, even though the copper price hasn't really had this blow off extreme parabolic run yet. Nevertheless, I'm still interested in buying a bit of this COPX and maybe one of those couple speculative copper miners as well, just to increase my potential upside. So the world needs a massive amount of new commodities of the next 10 to 20 years, 30, 40 years. And I know a perfect stock that can get all of these commodities for pretty much free at some point in the future. And I want to show you how you could get exposure to this stock. Now, is this going to happen in the next 5 years? No. But is it going to happen in the long term? Yes. And does this stock also have other business models that are going to absolutely explode over the next 10 to 20 years? Yes. Is it easy to get exposure to this stock? No. So if it's harder to get exposure to this stock, it means people aren't already exposed to it, which means it's a better opportunity potentially. And what is that stock? Which I'm going to make a full video on next. So if you're not a subscriber, make sure you're subscribed. That next stock is SpaceX. Obviously, people can go up into space and mine the asteroids where there's ridiculous amounts of these deposits of metals and gold and everything. So I know that's a long way out, but SpaceX also has so many different business models. AI data mining in space because it's free cooling and free energy from the sun. So SpaceX is going to be an absolute game changer in the future. And in my next video, I'm going to show you how you can get exposure to SpaceX. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video on copper. And yeah, if you're interested in crypto, join my free Telegram group where I'm talking about that all day. And if you want like more one-on-one access, just let me know and we'll work something out. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.